Welcome back for another episode of Coptales&Cocktails. This is part 2 of our interview with Stephen Murphy, aka Murph, retired DEA agent who was part of the Pablo Escobar investigation, and also, one of the main focal points of the hit Netflix series Narcos. So, Murph, glad to have you back here with us.
Thank you, guys. I'm just really honored to be here with you. Thank you.
Well, and if anybody missed the first one, they need to go back and listen to that.
Yes.
This is like Lord of the Rings. You got to listen to the first
You
one
gotta,
so
you
that
gotta-
the second one understand.
Harry
right?
Potter, all the same. Yeah, you got to know.
These aren't random stories you can just pick out. You got to start from the beginning. So, what did it feel like to have a bounty on you?
You know, when you first hear it, it's very disconcerting, to be honest with you. But you know how we are. I mean, we adapt to whatever our situation is. And when I say we, I'm talking about law enforcement. And it's always in the back of your mind, but it's not something you dwell on and you don't worry about it. I'll be honest with you. Probably my biggest threat from having that bounty is that my wife would kill me in my sleep because I was worth more dead than I was alive,
That with the money they were the Pablo Escobar organization was thrown, combined with the life insurance of being a federal agent. So
there you go.
Worth something. Honestly, Murph, it's one of those deals. Not at that level. I mean, shit. Obviously, not Pablo Escobar or anybody at that level with a bounty on my head or any of the guys I worked with. But in this day and age, when you've got gangsters that are whether it's on social media. Or making their own little videos that they post on YouTube, and they're talking about you in their video, or even things as simple as graffiti that's up, that's like "fuck TPD gang unit" or "fuck sticks" or "fuck this guy." It means you're doing your job, and that's it. You're a pain in their ass, and that's what our job is. You're trying to disrupt what they are doing, criminally day to day. So, when they put something like that out there after you, it means you're doing your job.
Well, I mean, we were doing wiretaps on their phones, and we being the Colombia National Police, and we're supporting them. And there was one time when Pablo made reference to the two gringos, and there was one time when he mentioned Pinion Murphy. What we tell people is, it's not like that TV show Cheers, where you want everybody to know your name. This isn't somebody you want to know your name.
Yeah, exactly. And something we didn't talk about in the first hour of the federal agencies. I mean, obviously, DEA is the one that kind of does go worldwide, as far as drug trafficking. I mean, ATF doesn't necessarily obviously look at, the guns that are going down to Mexico and stuff like that, but they don't typically get to go around the world for investigations like you guys, right?
Yep. And even to this day, DEA still has the largest foot of any federal law enforcement agency footprint outside the United States. I think there's 91 offices in 70 something countries now. It's what makes DEA so successful in its investigations, because our borders are sieves, everything's coming in across our borders. We can't stop it. Mm-hmm. So if we can attack it at the source, we're a lot more successful that way. But you mentioned ATF. We had a full-time ATF agent assigned to us down there in Bogota, JJ Ballesteros. He was phenomenal. I mean, he did one hell of a job. He actually came and lived with us in Medellin there for a few months till his headquarters found out where he was. Told him to get his butt back to the embassy of Bogota to safety. Yeah. But I mean, he bent over backwards to do everything he could to help us.
Well, and there's been a couple of guys that were formerly TPD officers that joined the DEA, and they have been in Colombia and a couple of other South American places. And I'll say it, they were all single. Every one of them. One of the guys still to this day, a guy by the name of Peter Marr, he is out there doing very, very well as far as investigations. I know he's making a name for himself. But they like this, being, I don't want to say on the government's dime. I mean, they're working, but they're getting to be in these exotic countries and having a lot of fun when they're not at work. I will leave it at that. So they really enjoy it.
Yep.
Hey, well, what did you do that warranted a conversation on a phone that brought up your name? What kind of thorn did you stick in that bastard's side that he was pissed off at you guys about? Because I'm sure he wasn't planning your birthday party.
No, he was maybe planning my funeral. So all the gringos were under orders not to leave the police base. Well, I mean, think about this. Now, I'm a guest in your country. I come into your police base and I tell you, hey guys, listen, I heard I heard Pablo Escobar's down at the corner of First and Main. Go down there and check it out. I'm gonna get some coffee. I'll, report back to me when you get back. What are you gonna tell me? You're gonna tell me, hey, Murph, there's to you, brother.
Right.
So Javi and I, we just made a conscious decision at the very beginning that we're going to continue to, to do our job. And so we didn't break any laws down there. And, and I'm all sincerity, I mean that. We broke policies and procedures every freaking day. We kind of looked at them as strong suggestions, and sometimes we adhered and sometimes we didn't. But the funny thing was when, you get a break, come back to Bogota for a weekend, you go into the embassy before you went back up to Medellin, and the bosses are like, listen, when you're out there this time, I want you to do this. Although they know you're not supposed to be out there. And that, even the bastard knew what we were doing. So we were going out on the Huey gunships every day with Colombian National Police. You're coming into landing zones and doing raids, and you're getting shot at. And, I got to tell you, there's a lot of days I'm wondering, what the heck am I doing here? But it's the Colombian cops are a lot like us American cops in that camaraderie thing, and you become friends, and you become friends to the point where you're willing to fight with your friends, and you don't want to leave them there. And people ask all around the world when we travel, they'll ask, how did you guys survive? And I usually answer the question, and I'm a Christian, and I believe the good man upstairs took care of us, kept us alive, and, it wasn't his plan for us to be killed down there. So I give him the praise and the glory and the credit, but he also assigned us to work with this elite group of Colombian police officers. Now, these guys have become such close friends that when it hit the fan, we knew they wouldn't run off and leave us. We knew they'd stand there and fight. I mean, these were stone cold warriors. It's unbelievable what they were going through, and we didn't see nearly the danger they did. But at the same token, they also knew that when it hit the fan, when shit hit the fan, Javier and I wouldn't run off and leave them either. We stood and fought with them. So that mutual respect is what kept us alive. We went to a funeral one time. We were on this operation. It was a Colombian National Police operation without us, and 8 police officers were killed. And one was a major, so we went, the Colombian National Police have their own funeral home in Bogota. They have so many policemen killed, not just the Narcos, but also the FARC and the M19 and the different guerrilla groups they had down there. And you go in, there's 8 caskets there, and they don't embalm the bodies. They drain fluids, but you can imagine how it smelled when you got there. And then you see the families, and they put a little glass window over the deceased person's face, which is, it's a little bit disconcerting as well. Not what I'm used to anyway. But then when the funeral was over, we take some of the cops and we go meet at a local bar. And down there, you're sitting out on the street, you're just having a couple cold drinks. And I went over to this one sergeant. I said, I'm sorry for what happened to the major and his crew. And his response was, keep paying it. That means like, shit happens, and it was over. Now, when the funeral's going on, they're crying, they're falling on the caskets. And I'm not used to seeing that. Mm-hmm. But then when it's over, and they're moving on. I mean, it's a different culture, very different culture than what we're used to.
Jeez.
Well, we hear you have children.
I got 4. That's why I have no hair.
Well, I have 2 and I have no hair. So you have 2 boys, right?
I have 2 sons and 2 daughters. My sons are 42 and 40. The oldest one is an orthopedic surgeon. He does pediatric spinal surgery at Children's Hospital in Atlanta. I'm real proud of him. The second one is in construction, can do anything when it comes to construction. You want to lay brick, you want to lay block, you want to do drywall, it doesn't matter. Framing, he can do it all. But then we also have 2 little girls. I think that's what you're leaning towards, right?
Well, let's save the girls part. I mean, that's the feel-good stuff. Let's save that for the end of the episode here when we wrap it up. We're in the thick of still talking about you guys going after, Pablo. So something I have, just as a question I guess I have is as a former cop, what's the largest seizure I guess that you were able to see firsthand down there, both dope or money? Because reading the stuff about he was one of the. Literally, I think it was like Forbes magazine, like for 6 or 7 years in a row, Pablo Escobar was listed as one of the richest, men in the world. He was a billionaire, and they estimated something, like $30 billion back in that time, which is 65, 70 billion now. I read that he had so much money that his people were spending thousands of dollars a month just buying rubber bands to wrap the money that these guys had. So what was the largest seizure, that you were you were part of working with the cops down there?
It wasn't that much at all. Now, my partner Javier, and when we do our speaking tour, we use PowerPoint presentation. We have a few videos, but we have tons of photographs. He's got some pictures. They went to what we call a super cocaine lab in the jungles of Colombia, and they found the stash site. And the Spanish word is caleta. And a caleta is just any place that you can hide something. It doesn't have to be a hole in the ground. It could be a hole, it could be a hidden wall. It could be anywhere. So they found the caleta, and what they pulled out of it was 10 tons of cocaine.
Jeez.
We've got photographs that we show that during our tour. I didn't see hardly any at all. I saw the first Colombian produced heroin lab. We went to that after it was discovered by the police, and it was just a little mom and pop type operation. They could make, I don't even know if they could make a kilo, what they were doing there. But that's when they were testing out the Colombian produced heroin, and man, they perfected it. They had some issues with the purity, so they brought in some Lebanese chemists who helped them refine it down, and their heroin was coming in at 98%. In that world, that's considered pure. And then they just used their same distribution routes that they were using for cocaine. Asian heroin at that time was going for about 250 to 300,000 a kilo, primarily up in New York, the big cities in the Northeast. The Colombians came in with heroin just as good at 50,000 a kilo. There for a long time, there was no Asian heroin in the United States. It was all coming out of Colombia. Yep. And then the Mexicans had the black tar and, the brown heroin and that stuff going on.
Man, and just talking about getting into the States, was there a primary method they were using? I mean, by air, by boat? I know he had a submarine or two at some point. I've heard that. I don't know if that actually made it to the States, but, body packing, you name it, they were doing it.
Yeah. You know what? And so we've got a guest coming on. It's not Javier and I. Javier's a guest host on a podcast we've started, but it's a guy named Morgan Wright and I are the co-hosts on the show, like you guys. And we're bringing a former bad guy on here soon. In fact, we're interviewing this coming week, and his episode will be released here in a few weeks. He was involved in the cocaine business for 25 years. He got arrested moving 9,000 kilos out of Venezuela, headed into Europe. It's just, oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. We were in Miami. My first case as a case agent, where I didn't have a senior partner breathing down my neck all the time, was 500 kilos of coke. And you don't even make a dent in the market when doing that. I mean, we went out and partied like it was 1999, it was about 1999.
Well, yeah. That's the thing is, you think about you 500 kilos. That's a hell of a lick. That is a hell of a capture, but how much is just getting through? And we talk about that like with interdiction on the highway. You might have one really good interdiction a month,
Mm-hmm.
all the car stops you do, whether it's a cash seizure, going one way or, going south, or it's the dope coming north. But while you're on that car stop, do you know how much of it's driving right past you the whole time? I mean, there's so much of it out there.
It is.
And not to throw Live PD into this, I think for the general public that watched the show, people were interested in law enforcement, and that was something that a lot of people, whether it was face-to-face contacts or through the messaging, social media, people had no idea how much drugs is out there. And and on the show, it's small amounts of weed or heroin or meth or coke or something like that, but people were just blown away because it's just car stop after car stop after car stop. You just find it's so much of it out there.
Well, and I think I speak for not just because you're on the show, Sticks, but I think I speak for most people when we say we'd like to see that damn show come back.
Oh, you and me both. You and me both. Yeah. No, and hey, we'll see what 2022 brings. You never know. I mean, I know there's Cops is back on now. There's some like live show, police related type show that Kansas City is doing. There's a body cam show back on, on another channel. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. I mean, it was the #1 Friday and Saturday night show on all the TV. So hopefully it comes back.
Rooting for you guys.
Thanks, buddy.
Absolutely. So back to Howard. You all right, man?
Yeah, I'm with you, man.
Okay.
This ginger ale and rye, man. You're looking at it. I'm mesmerized by that mustache. I can't help it.
I apologize. I've got a sinus infection where we just moved to South Florida.
Yeah, so you've got new atmosphere, new air down there.
It's that Disney air.
Yeah. I may have to go back to drinking. I don't know. Maybe it'll help.
Hey,
Well, let's talk a little bit about the end of Pablo Escobar.
Very good. So on December 2nd, 1993, there was a Colombian police lieutenant whose name was Hugo Martinez, who had taught himself how to use radio directional finding equipment, because the telephone systems back then wasn't 4G and 5G like we have nowadays. It was just basically radio telephones operated off a radio frequency. Now we're listening to Pablo's phone calls. If he wanted to thwart our efforts, all he had to do was spin the dial to a new frequency. And then, we had the CIA working with us down there, and this is all declassified now, so we can talk about it. They had a plane up that would monitor the different frequencies trying to find the new freak. So on December 2nd, the government of France had donated these vans, several of these vans that contain radio directional finding equipment in them. The principle that they operated off of was triangulation. So triangulation tells you shoot three lines. Where the three lines intersect, that's where that frequency is emanating from, right? Now, even a hillbilly can understand this, right? So I know you guys got it.
Amen.
So the margin of error, though, was rather large, because you're talking about a compressed city. There's about 2 million people in Medellin at the time. So what you'd have to do is send in ground troops holding these handheld antennas that are about this big. And the way you use them is you drive down the street, hold them out the window like that. Well, there's nothing unusual about that, is there?
no, not one bit.
So Hugo, this lieutenant, is the guy driving down the street that day trying to find Pablo. Now, the first time he goes, there was water. And so he identified an address. This plainclothes unit that we worked with, they conducted a raid. It was an empty warehouse. Now, he caught a bunch of grief from these guys because, cops can be the hardest. We're harder on each other than we are anybody else. So what he realized, though, was there was a body of water close by, and he recalibrated his equipment to take into account the water. And as he's driving down the street, his little meter's telling him to look up to the left. He looks up and he says he sees Pablo Escobar on the phone looking out the window, looking at him. And he drives, he's in plain clothes, unmarked car, drives on by. They drive back again, and Pablo's still up there, and they see no reaction. I'm like, well, if he saw you run down the street holding an antenna out, that's a clue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we went back and listened to the phone calls afterwards, and there was nothing on the phone call like Pablo's telling me, hey, listen, what the heck is that? There was no indication that he saw what is in front of his eyes. And the only explanation we've ever come up with is as like we're talking, we're engrossed in the conversation. I know I'm waving my hands, but I'm not sure what they're doing because they kind of have a mind of their own. He's seeing things, but in his mind, he's in his conversation. So he didn't realize what he was looking at, which cost him his life. So the lieutenant calls in the plainclothes guys again. The U.S. operators had taught them how to use det cord to open doors. You frame the door and then just blow the door all to pieces. And so they got a crew that goes in. They had a couple officers around back. As they're going in, this is a 3-story row house. Pablo is on the second floor. So as they search the first floor real quick. They move up to the second floor. As Pablo is moving up to the third floor, he's shooting down at the cops. They're shooting up. Pablo at one time had as many as 500 bodyguards, 500 sicarios protecting him. This time, one. A guy whose street name was Limon or Lemon. So Limon goes up to the third floor window, jumps out the window onto the roof of a 2-story behind him. Okay, so he goes from a 3rd story to a 2-story. Runs across the roof. The cops told him to drop it, tell him to drop his weapons. He shoots at him. They kill him. He falls off the roof. Pablo gets up to that window. He knows the cops are coming over. He's already seen Limon get killed. He goes ahead and jumps down the roof, and he's trying to make his way along the wall so the guys on the ground can't see him. But he knows when the guys get up to the window, they're going to have a dead, because you got command view of the entire roof. So he makes a mad dash across. He's shooting at the cops. They shoot from the window. They shoot from the ground, catch him in a crossfire. He's hit 3 times. He's hit once in the back of the leg, once in the butt cheek, and then the kill shot was a .223 round through the ear, through the right ear. That was the kill. The other 2 shots were just knockdown shots. They weren't kill shots. Now, if you've seen the Narcos series, it shows that I was on the roof when all that happened. That's not true. That's Hollywood. I was back at the base. Actually, I rode out to the site with Colonel Martinez. So Lieutenant Hugo Martinez is the son of Colonel Hugo Martinez. And here's the cool thing. When that phone call was going down, we had Colonel Martinez talking to who on the radio, his son, Lieutenant Martinez. And over here, you had Pablo talking to his little rat bastard son, Juan Pablo. Call that the bad guy, father, son team, right? So there's a lot of theories out there too that a U.S. operator, a U.S. military man, sniper, took out Pablo Escobar with this miraculous shot.
The precision shot into the ear hole, basically.
Right. Now, having lived and worked with these guys for 18 months, could they have done that? Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind whatsoever they could have taken that shot and placed it in Pablo's ear. Did they do it? Absolutely not. The reason I know is as the operation was going down, I was in the room with all the U.S. operators. I know exactly who was there, and I'm not taking anything away from them. I love these guys. I mean, Javier, make no bones about it. If we were kidnapped, that's who I want to come get me because they're that good. I've seen what they can do, but that's the truth. And their leader at the time was General Jerry Boykin, who Jerry and I have become friends here in our afterlives after law enforcement, after his military career. He's a 3-star general. I saw him speak one day and I've read his book, Never Surrender. And he says in the book, and he'll tell you in person, that it was not the U.S. military that killed Pablo Escobar. It was the Colombian National Police. And the reason I'm kind of dragging this out a little bit is that's the one point I want everybody to remember. It wasn't the gringos that brought down Pablo. We helped the Colombian National Police. We helped the governor of Colombia. But the true heroes are the Colombian National Police because they took their country back from this piece of crap.
Yeah.
And that's the honest to God's truth.
Mass murder.
Absolutely.
And Murph, obviously that was like a fast evolving deal. They're using the triangulation deal, spots them up in the window. All right, man, we've got them. Let's go. If it was more, I don't want to say planned. I mean, obviously it was planned, but if it, a longer time frame, okay, tomorrow at 4:00, we're going to do this. Would you guys have been involved in that raid, or was that still something that had been strictly left to, Colombian officials, Colombian military, Colombian police?
Normally we would go out with them. If it was a planned raid, one of us would go with them.
Yeah.
I'm glad it worked out the way it did, though. And you know what? Then when the media started showing up, that just happened to be a day where I'm wearing a red polo shirt.
There's a picture
of all colors. Huh? Yeah, there is. And the red sticks out like a sore thumb. I don't know what the heck I was thinking. I think it's probably the only clean shirt I had up there. But when the media started showing up, I went to Lieutenant Colonel Polias, a really good friend of ours. And he and I were talking about it and said, it's probably a good thing if I get out of here. And because we wanted the Colombians to have credit for the operation. We didn't want to see gringos. Sure. My sister lives in just south of Nashville. She told me she saw me on CNN, but just moving, she recognized me, but nobody else knew who I was. And so they got me out of there. They gave me a protection detail, got me back to the base. That night, we went into total lockdown. I mean, this base, it's like a military base in the United States. They had concrete pillboxes on the perimeters. They tripled the guard that night. I mean, we were expecting a retaliation attack. Quietest night I ever spent in Colombia, believe it or not. Nothing happened.
And
the king was dead.
The king was dead. Let me ask you this, Murph. Obviously, the U.S. was involved. Colombia was involved. You mentioned, I think, France, you said, that donated these vans. His drug enterprise was obviously not coming just to the United States. I mean, it was going all over the place. What other countries throughout the entire investigation that you were a part of, worked alongside or contributed some sort of an intelligence, or just like France donating those vans? I mean, were there numerous other countries you can talk about that were involved?
There were. Pablo developed a business plan for drug trafficking that made him responsible for 80% of the world's cocaine, first in the United States and then throughout the world. I mean, think about it. You guys are podcasters now, right? Wouldn't you like to have 80% of the market?
Heck,
yeah,
Apple would.
We changed our name to Amazon.
There you go. I mean, it's just
the Amazon of podcasting.
It's crazy.
80% of everything.
But we had really good contacts with the RCMP guys in the Canadian Embassy. The British were excellent to work with. They didn't take as active a role as we did. Neither one of them did. But Pablo realized that the world was his playground. That he could he was actually making more money in Europe than he was in the United States on a kilo of coke. I think down in Australia, Javi and I were down there just a little before COVID, and we were speaking to a law enforcement conference in Perth, and we went over to the Western Australian Police Academy and met with a bunch of sergeants and corporals. And I mean, you talk about an uncomfortable feeling. Here comes two gringos in, and here's all these seasoned guys sitting back like, what the hell are you going to tell me?
Right.
but we went in with a pretty good open attitude, and we told some jokes and broke the ice and ended up being good friends with all these guys. But a kilo of coke over there today is like $100,000 in Australia.
Nice.
I'm thinking if we put a load together, 1,000 kilos, we could all retire, right? What do you think?
No more podcast.
You gotta. It's got to be in quarantine for 14 days, though.
Yeah.
Listen to you. Listen to you. It's and it's just grown from there. I mean, you got the Russian mobs involved now, and all the criminals around the world, man, they're just taking advantage of everything. You see, I was reading an article just last week. Is it Denmark, where they tried the legalization, to try to be a kinder, gentler nation?
How'd that
Because
work out?
yeah, well, they've got some major issues now. None of it's ever. Legalization has never worked anywhere in the world, but and I'm going to get some hate mail off of this because I always say this, but it's never worked anywhere before. But here we are in the United States, and we think we're better than everybody else.
Right.
Just wait and see what happens.
No, and I agree. And hell, I'll tell you, my son works at a dispensary. He does, but here in the state of Oklahoma, which is we avoid politics on this podcast,
right?
But the state of Oklahoma is a very red state. So saying this is surprising for such a red state, but it is a misdemeanor crime now in the state of Oklahoma for possession of any narcotic, regardless of your criminal history.
No shit.
Swear. Now, possession with intent, obviously a felony, trafficking a felony, but simple possession. So you got, these guys that are 3-time ex-cons, gangsters, been to prison for robbery, been to prison for dope, and unless you can prove an intent case for the PCP that they have on them or the crack they have on them and so forth, it's a misdemeanor, which is no different than catching a high school kid with a dime sack of weed. I mean, it's the same charge. It is not going to be prosecuted. They're going to get a probation or, a deferred sentence, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And I want to say something here that you guys I hope you don't cut me off the podcast when I say this.
No, go ahead.
But it's the way I feel about that. If you think, so I've asked my oldest son that's a doctor, I said, find me some credible research on marijuana that it has a positive medicinal purpose. Mm-hmm. He hasn't been able to come up with anything yet. Okay. Now, having said that, if you're suffering chronic pain, and I mean legitimate chronic pain, not some dude that smoked weed since he was in junior high school, but I mean, let's say you're dying of cancer. And if smoking weed relieves you of that pain, I don't have a problem with that. No, I don't think anybody deserves to live in severe, chronic, habitual pain like that. So I know a lot of people, I hope my cop buddies don't get ticked off at me by hearing me say that, but it's more humanitarian. I don't believe there's a medicinal purpose, but if it psychologically helps you over the pain threshold, I'm okay.
About it, you could, Tom Segura is a stand-up comedian, and he talked about when he tried to get his card back when California was in the first ones, and he was coming up with all these elaborate things that he's like, man, I just like smoking weed. I want to get a weed. And he came up with all these elaborate things on what his problems were and all this. Then he found out basically all I have to do is walk into one of these doctors and go, my eyeballs hurt,
or I have headaches.
And they're like, oh yeah, here you go, here's your weed card. But
I actually talked to Tom Segura.
Dude, that guy I've seen him in stand up in person. He's actually going to be here in Tulsa here in the spring of 2022 at one of our casinos, and I'm definitely going to that. But that dude is freaking hilarious.
He's hilarious. And he was pro Pablo when we started the conversation, and it was one of the most lighthearted interviews I've ever done with anybody. Yeah. And at the end of the interview, he's like, you know what? You've changed my mind. You've changed my mind about Pablo Escobar.
Where the hell did you talk to him at? He's got a podcast as well, but
it was on his podcast. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, shit. All right.
Yeah. Okay. But let's go to
it wasn't as good as this one, I'll tell you though.
Well,
I mean, he can't hold a candle to you guys.
He's not as good looking.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Absolutely not.
Good looking too.
Yeah.
So there's that.
On a total, seriously, I love that dude. His stand-up shows. I mean, I can almost quote him. Like when he talks about the first 48 in one of his deals for anyone who's ever watched the show, the first 48. There's also a gnarly video of him. I think he's playing like fucking basketball, and he
can play.
No, he snaps his arm in half.
Oh, then he can't play.
Yeah, he got hurt like a year ago. So
how do you snap your arm playing basketball?
Well, I snapped my arm in half playing baseball, so figure that one out too.
Oh,
okay. Jeez. Anyway, what you were saying, Howard?
Well, let's get to his daughters.
All right,
great part.
Oh,
Well, yes. Well, let's take. I want to finish the show. We've got about
Okay.
we got 18, 19 minutes left here, and you're trying to jump right ahead to the heartwarming stuff. We have to go through all of that and wrap it up nicely.
Okay, well, I'm all about that. He's got so much interesting stuff, and I got a page of notes. And
Yeah, you do, but you're jumping from top to bottom. We got to teach you an outline.
all right, cool.
Anyways, so as we were saying, we will get to your lovely daughters because it is an amazing story. Obviously, we know
Thank
that your boys. Briefly, let's talk about the show Narcos. You've kind of pointed out some things that obviously not knocking the production of the show or anything like that. TV is TV. What was it like, man? Just getting to share the story, be a part of that. I don't know what a creative consultant or whatever you were for it.
Yeah, it wasn't anything like we expected. I mean, Eric Newman called me in February of 13, met him in March of 13. In May of 13, we signed contracts with Netflix. At the end of June, I pulled the pin and retired from law enforcement after almost 38 years as a cop. I mean, even my oldest son's like, Dad, you can't leave DEA. You are DEA, because I just love my job. God, thank the good Lord upstairs that I had the job I did. But then within just a couple of weeks after retirement, we're sitting in Hollywood in the writer's room and starting to write the Narcos series. Now, what we didn't know is that that Eric and his crew had already been working on this for a couple of years. So you go into the writer's room and they've got a library of books, the most extensive library I've ever seen on narcotics trafficking. I've never even heard of most of the books in there. And the writers are phenomenally intelligent. They're very well read. They're well spoken. And so we spent 1 week, Javier and I both there. It was kind of funny. I don't know what your experiences have been out there, Sticks, but you'd show up for work like at, I don't know, 9 or 9:30 and 10:30, you got your union coffee break. And about 12:30, you got your union 2-hour lunch. And then at 3:30, you got your next union coffee break. And if you were there at 4:30, that was a long damn day. I mean, it was crazy. And we're, coming off DEA, we were used to working 14, 16-hour days.
Right.
So that was kind of comical. But then we thought, well, once they write it, we'll go to Colombia where they're going to film. Wrong. Once a year, we'd go to Hollywood, meet with the writers, spend a week with them, telling our stories. Then everything else was done on the phone and emails. Then when they filmed they were filming the last episode. And before they started filming, Javier took the producers and directors down to Colombia and Medellin and showed them where we used to work and live and places like that, where things happened. And then the last week of filming, they brought me down and I brought my wife and my daughters down. And we spent a week down there getting to meet the actors. And we'd already met the actors. I'd had Pedro Pascal and Boyd Holbrook had come to my house and with Javier. And then Joanna Christie, who played my wife, Connie, she came and spent a few days with us, getting to learn about nursing and all that. So I got to go on set and watch how filming's done, and it's not at all what I thought it was going to be. It really wasn't. It was I don't want to say disappointing, but it's just not at all what I expected.
Yeah, it's.
And then season 2 was just,
it's pretty incredible when you see the production side of television and the difference watching that happen and what we at home sit and see on TV. It is definitely very, very different. Talented people, obviously, that can put it together, but it is not the same it's not what you think it is, I guess.
It's crazy.
What did you think about being represented as Boyd? Did that?
You know what? He and I have become very, very good friends. I was just talking to him this past week. I'm probably not supposed to tell you that. I won't tell you the movie. He's finishing up a movie now that's a big ass movie. It's a continuation in a series of these. And when it comes out, you know what I'm talking about. His career is just doing phenomenal. And same for Pedro. But Boyd is a East Kentucky, hillbilly. His dad's a coal miner. I'm first generation non-coal miners in the Murphys. So my wife's family, her dad and both her brothers were coal miners. Her oldest brother made it up to the higher ranks. He worked in the corporate headquarters, but he would also go out to troubled mines, and he's a super guy, and he just had a knack of getting along with people and making things work. And so Boyd's dad actually worked for my brother-in-law at one point in his career. We've met his mom, now he's married. He's got a little boy. And so what I was going to say is I was just talking to him this past week, and we're actually going to have him on our show, and I haven't told anybody that. So you guys, you're the first guys to hear that on the radio. I hope he doesn't get mad at me, but
No.
he's just phenomenal. He wrote a script. He sent it to me. He said, "Hey, would you mind reading this? Because it involves crime, and I won't give up his script." But I got an expert, former DEA agent who had more knowledge than me, and we were able to help him tweak everything. And so we're just waiting for it. We told him, the only thing we want is the invitation to premiere. Yeah, because he's a super guy. Love the guy.
And you've kind of talked about your podcast, or we've talked about the podcast. What's the name of your podcast? And I'm assuming, it's everywhere out there, just so everybody can find you.
It is. It's Game of Crimes. If you've heard of Game of Thrones, it might be a little play off of that.
I've never heard of it.
If you see our logo, our throne, a friend of mine in New Zealand created that for us. So we have our own throne made out of weapons and nightsticks and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. Handcuffs. It's a weekly true crime podcast. It's long form. So an interview for us every show has a guest like you guys, although it could be a 4-hour interview. And when we do that, we divide it into 2 different episodes, and we'll drop one on Monday mornings and the second on Thursday mornings. In almost every interview, we want the people to tell their stories, just like you do. Let me tell my story. That's what we want these guys to do. And it's not only good guys. We've had a few bad guys. If you remember the movie Blow with Johnny Depp.
Oh yeah, great movie.
Johnny played a drug trafficker named George Jung. We interviewed George back in the spring, and then our podcast didn't launch until July or June, late June. And thankfully, we got his interview because he passed away in May. But he was our first bad guy. We've had a former money launderer from Miami on there. So I got to look at my list here. we've got the guy I told you about that got popped with 9,000 kilos coming out of Venezuela. There's several more, and I don't want to give up too much. But
your bad guys are ex-criminals are topping ours. I mean, we've got a bank robber, we've got drug dealers, we've got street level drug dealers, street gangsters, stuff like that. A cop that's been to prison,
informants.
Yeah,
that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I actually saw that one about the cop. I don't know if I could have interviewed him.
Yeah.
No, you guys are doing great. I love it. We're learning from you.
Appreciate it. And obviously, it's there in the background. You either got suckered into buying a whole bunch of books, or you've got your own book there for sale. What book you got?
Yeah, Javi and I wrote a book called Manhunters: How We Took Down Pablo Escobar. But it's not just about Pablo. It's about how we grew up. It's about our entire law enforcement careers. And if you're interested, you can get it on Amazon for next to nothing. I think you might only have to pay $3 or $4 for it now. It's not doing all that great. But you can go on our website, DEANarcos.com, and we'll send you an autographed and personalized copy. It's a little bit more than $3 though.
There you go. So the Manhunters book is not like a dating book or anything like that, right?
No, there's no porn in there. I'll tell you that right now.
No OnlyFans.
Before we get to your lovely daughters, because that's a great story. Want to make sure everybody hears. Talk to us about the Hawaii Clipper.
Oh, so yeah, I'm really excited about that. We call it the Lost Clipper. So, and here's the Reader's Digest version. And find out more, go to lostclipper.com. So in the 1930s, Pan Am Airways had these fleet of ocean-going aircraft. They would take off from the water and land in water. They were called the Clipper series. One was the Hawaiian Clipper. In 1938, it went missing. It had taken off from San Francisco. It's a 4-engine plane. These planes are massive. They're bigger than anything you see out there today. The fuel capacity was so low that they had to island hop. So the plane was going from San Francisco to, was it Chiang Mai? I can't remember exactly where, Singapore, one of those places over there. But this is when the battle was going on between the Chinese and the Japanese. They were at war. So the Hawaiian Clipper just disappears. Well, there were 15 Americans on board that plane. They were never seen again. What we've done is Javier and I we're the lead investigators for this group that's led by a guy named Guy Knopfsinger. Guy's a retired naval intelligence officer, has been working on this project for 20 years. It was his thesis when he went through Staff Command College in the military. So these are our theories. There was one Asian gentleman on the plane that owned 3 restaurants in Newark, New Jersey. He was reportedly carrying $3 million in what we would refer to as bearer bonds or bearer notes today. So if you've got that note in your hand, it's the same as cash. He says that, his story is that he was going to take that and give it to Chiang Kai-shek because $3 million would buy 50 American fighter planes and a year's worth of maintenance. We don't believe that. What we believe happened is when the plane took off, excuse me, from Guam, that we have documented reports that said when the plane took off from the water, it looked tail heavy. When the plane got to the point of no return, where it couldn't turn around and come back, 2 Japanese spies came up from the back of the plane with revolvers and skyjacked the Hawaiian Clipper, forced it to land in Truk Lagoon. Now, these are our theories. Forced it to land in Truk Lagoon, which is the Japanese Pearl Harbor. Okay.
Gotcha.
If you've ever, it's the best wreck diving site in the world because there's so many ships and planes and stuff in this huge lagoon there. That was General Yamamoto's headquarters. They took the 15 Americans onto the island of Tonawas, which is still there. We actually, before COVID, I went over with the team. It was my first search for 2 weeks. It was their 4th, and we're already planning the 5th trip. We're just waiting for COVID rules to lift so we can go over with. Last time we took ground penetrating radar. This time we're going to take cadaver dogs. So if we can find, and we think we know where the bodies are buried, if we can find these 15 Americans and prove this is what will change in history. The first skyjacking in the history of the world will be the Hawaiian Clipper. The 15 Americans will finally have closure with their families on what really happened to them. The first act of war by the Japanese against the United States won't be Pearl Harbor anymore.
Oh, yeah,
it'll be the skyjacking of the Hawaiian Clipper 3 years before. And by the way, 1938, this was the Depression. So this guy carrying $3 million
from 3
he says
restaurants.
Yeah, he said he raised the fund. He raised that money from fundraisers at his 3 Chinese restaurants.
He must have had a hell of a buffet.
Well, what we believe is that Dwight Eisenhower and Eleanor had a lot to do with this. But now here's the kicker. We also believe that $3 million was going to be given to the Japanese as ransom to get back Amelia Earhart, who disappeared the year before in 1937. So if you've seen the shows where those explorers that found the Titanic, they made a big TV series out of it. They're also searching for Amelia Earhart. We've met with them several times. We're comparing notes and exchanging information. They're on a big search. They've got the research vessel. We don't have, nearly the budget or the resources they do. But, people look at me like, you're a freaking idiot. You're an old man, retired cop going to this island that has no running water, no electricity, but it's inhabited. What the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
The way I look at it is life's an adventure, man. It's just because I'm getting old, doesn't mean I can't go on any more adventures. I mean, we're trying the podcast as an adventure, just like you guys are.
No, your adventure definitely outdone ours
And bared fruit.
Yes.
I don't think so. I don't have a TV show.
Oh, whatever. But yeah, Narcos. Yeah, had nothing to do with you.
That
Whatever.
was no TV show at all.
Yeah, nothing.
Hey, I got like a 3-second cameo appearance on it. You're on there every week.
Well, we hope to get it back. But listen, Murph, before we get out of here, we do want to get back to what, Howard started hitting on a little bit early about your lovely daughters. So not just the fact that for the world, Pablo Escobar he wasn't apprehended. He was stopped as this world drug trafficker. But you yourself, amongst numerous things, had some beautiful things come out of your time down there, correct?
We did. So if you've watched the series, it shows that my wife and I adopted a little girl down there, and the show, her name's Olivia. The thing is, and we adopted a little girl from Bogota. The thing is, in the show, it shows that Javier and I'd been on this unilateral running gun battle across these rooftops and killed some guys. And we're walking back, and there's this little girl, and the actor playing, Boyd, says, "Oh, look at her. She's cute. I'm going to take her home." Even in Colombia, it's kidnapping. You can't do that, right?
You can't do that.
So, and then here's the true story. What we did is we just went through normal channels. We tried adopting in the United States. My sons were living with my ex. I'll be honest with you, we found out back in the late 1980s that adoptions in the United States was a racket. Mm-hmm. Even the Christian groups, were really sketchy. So just went through normal channels in Bogota and Colombia. Got Monica. She's from a little town north of Bogota called Zipaquira. She was 8 months old when we got her. She's now 28 years old. She's doing great. She works for a law firm in Tyson's Corner up in Northern Virginia, just outside of DC. Still single out there, guys. And let me tell you what, Colombian ladies are very nice looking.
They're very pretty.
I might be a little prejudiced about my daughters, but
I've actually seen a picture of her. I think Howard earlier today, just, when we were talking about the different topics, he sent a picture of her. She is a very lovely looking woman.
She is. She is.
Yes.
So, but what the show was supposed to show you in season 2, and for whatever reason it hit the, the editing floor, is my wife and I adopted a second little girl. Her name's Mandy. She's from Medellin, Colombia. Now we got her in May of 94, just before we returned to the United States. She's now 27. She lives here in Orlando with her family, and I've got 5 granddaughters now, but she's got a 4-year-old daughter that we lived very close to in Northern Virginia, got really attached to. So that had a lot to do with us moving down here. We were going to move to Florida anyway. But here's the cool thing about Mandy's story. The adoption center where we got her sat down in a little valley, and on the hillside behind it was this 8-story building called the Monaco building. That was the building where Pablo Escobar's family lived. So the shadow of the Monaco building, fell over this orphanage, this adoption center. So now we adopted her after Escobar was dead, but as you can imagine, I still had a lot of enemies up there. Jaime and I both did. So the ambassador said, look, you guys can go up there and adopt this little girl, but you cannot spend the night, and you got to have a protection detail. Well, the Colombian police love the fact that my wife and I were adopting these girls. So I called, I talked to one general. He's like, whatever you need. So Connie and I, we fly into the airport. Rio Negro Airport is outside the city, and it's about a 45-minute drive into the city of Medellin. When we land there, they've got 3 carloads of plainclothes police officers. These are guys I've been working with for the last 18 months, and they're there for our protection detail. And they got a Huey gunship sitting there. They've got the 30 cals and the gunners. My wife looks over there. She's got a dress and heels on. She's like, I'm not getting on that damn thing. So the lieutenant, I talked to him, and he's like, they're very rank conscious. And he said, I got to call the colonel. And well, the colonel was one of our friends. And he said, they couldn't, when they were pronounced my name, they didn't say Steve. It came out as Steak or Stick, like yours.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I'm not a stick. I've never been a stick. So, but everybody called me that. And they're like, Steak, I can't do this. I got to call the colonel. And the colonel, I told him, he's like, put the lieutenant back on the phone. He said, you stay with them. If they're ready for 3 months, you will stay with them for 3 months. They stay there till they leave Medellin. So we got 3 carloads going around, and these are all plainclothes, and they've got their Uzis and their Galil 7.62 millimeter weapons and all this stuff. I'm like, guys, listen, low key, don't show your weapons. Oh, no problem. We got it. So we go to the adoption center. We pick up a lawyer and a translator. We have to go on a variety of appointments. A lawyer, we had to go see another lawyer, we had to see a judge, we had to go to a doctor, a notary, all these different things you got to do. And so what they would do is the first car would go to the end of the street and slide sideways. Then we pull in, then the third car would block the other. And here they come out with their long guns. I'm like, dude, what part of low key don't you understand here? So, and the reason I'm telling you that is the last day we had to do this trip twice. So Connie and I are sitting in there talking to the director of this adoption agency. She said, okay, and she's a sweet lady. I mean, you just love her. She said, okay, everything's done. Mandy is now legally your daughter. No, the original birth records have been destroyed. You're in the book. Nobody can take her away from you. She is legally yours. Can I ask you some questions? And I'm thinking, oh my God, no, I don't want to answer any more questions. And I said, okay, what you got? She said, who are you people? And I said, you know who we are. I mean, you've got all the paperwork, you've done a home study, you've been to our apartment in Bogota, all this stuff. She's like, yeah, but we adopt 2 Americans every day. We've never seen a security detail like this. Who are you people? And so on our paperwork, she said, who do you work for? I said, the Department of Justice. Well, she just assumed I was an attorney. She didn't pursue it any further. I never told her I was a DEA agent. So she said, well, we kind of go back. She said, there's got to be more to this story because this is just not normal. And finally I said, ¿sabe qué es la DEA? Do you know what the DEA is? She said, I knew it had to be something like that. And I said, now, do we have a problem? Because I got 3 carloads of friends outside. Right. This little girl's going home with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she said, no. She said, no. And let me tell you my story. She said, my son was 17 years old. He was out with his buddies in downtown Medellin. I mean, when I was 17, I was chasing girls and trying to find somebody to buy my beer, right? Sure. Maybe some cigarettes. So he and his buddies are out doing whatever 17-year-olds do. And 2 rival drug gangs show up. They get in an argument. And there's a gun battle. And her son is killed by a stray bullet. she said, I love you guys. Thank you for what you did for my country. Thank you, partner, please. And, we couldn't be happier that you adopted this little girl. So it's, it's just a fitting legacy in my mind. And I might be a little sick. I know I'm a little crazy, but it's just fitting that that's the way the whole Escobar story ended, is me with a beautiful little girl that came within a stone's throw of the building where Pablo and his family lived. And you know what? I got a message for Pablo, and it's the same message that he gave everybody else.
That's it.
That's our story.
Well, Murph, it is a hell of a story, man. So damn glad to have you on here.
Hell of a pleasure. Too. The thing that's amazing about you is you're a stone cold badass.
No, I'm not.
And there we go. And on the other end, you're just humble about all this.
I'm not.
What we refer to as good people, man. I mean,
I will admit I have a strong work ethic. I mean, I don't play golf. I don't, I just working that's why I have all these projects. It keeps me out of my wife's hair. Well, I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Murph, we only got a minute here, man. Sorry to cut you off there, buddy.
No problem.
But just for our people listening, Murph was on he does a lot of speaking. Obviously, he talked about it, particularly for law enforcement conferences and schools and stuff like that. Was here in Oklahoma a few years ago, and he and his partner were speaking here, and I was able to snap a photo with those guys. So,
yes, sir.
Good to see your face again, man. Much appreciated spending your time with us here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being our first two-parter.
Oh, it's such an honor to be with both of you, Howard. Thank you so much. And Sticks, it's good to see you again. I know you don't remember meeting us, but like I said, we posted.
No, I legitimately, I remember. So that conference, that was the only part that I showed up for. I'm not going to lie.
It was because you got up on stage for about 5 minutes before we spoke.
Yep. I was asked to speak the chief asked me to speak. And that was the only part that I show up for, was listening to you guys. So yeah.
They said, hey, would you mind if Sticks takes 5 minutes of your time? I'm like, are you kidding? Hell, we want to hear him speak,
Yeah, I was not prepared. Yeah. I got asked at the last moment to get up there and talk. So yeah,
it
was good.
True honor to be here with both of you. Thank you guys for having me on the show.
Well,
thanks, buddy.
Thanks for being with us. Have a good day.
You too. See you soon.